Hi, welcome to this first lecture of this section, and in this lecture we are going to talk about the user interface overview. And you can see when you open Maya for the first time, and by the way I'm using Maya 2018 for this course. So when you install and open the software for the first time, you might see something like this. So here you can see there's a floating window called what's new highlight settings here, and you can see the green highlights. If you look these options, these are having like green boundaries, so that means these are new options released in this Maya 2018. Okay, if you go to menu options, you might see some options green highlighted, and that's the new option released in this version. So if you don't want to see these green highlights new options, you can turn this off from here. Highlight what's new, you can turn that off. Or if you don't want this floating window when you open Maya, so you can turn this off. You can turn off this, so this art startup option. So just turn this two button off and let's say okay. Okay, so here is my Maya, and again I'm using Maya 2018. If you are using a lower version, still you can follow along because it's like same. I'm not going to use any specific options, but make sure you install Maya 2018 if you can do that. So let's see what are there in the interface and their names and some basic functions. So here you can see my interface. You can see there are so many things, but you don't have to learn everything to start. And by the way, we are not going to learn everything. There are very different options like for animation, for rigging, for rendering, so you don't have to learn everything and then start. Okay, we are going to learn very basics, and then we are going to start our character project next section. And in this section we are going to cover the Maya basics. Okay, so here you can see on the screen I have a big space here, and this is my workspace. Here we are going to create the model, animate the model. So again you can see I have menus, I have some options here, I have some options to the right, some options to the left, and some at the bottom. So we're going to see quickly what's their name. So on the top you can see it says the software version, and it says on title, which is the scene name. So this is called title bar, and bottom to that this is called menu bar. So in the menu bar we have all the menus, and bottom to that this line is called status line. And here you can see the menu selector. We are going to change menu from here. Now it's by default set to modeling. If I change this to rigging, just note this menu here, it's going to change according to the menu select here. Whenever you change a menu, it's going to show that specific menus here. Let's change to modeling here, and you can see in the status line we have some new open scene, save scene, undo, redo options, and some other options here for rendering as well. And here at the end we have some options for this area. I'm going to come back here in a minute. And here you can see the self, and now the poly modeling self is active, so you can access all the poly modeling primitives and then some options. If I select curved surface, again it's going to change and show specific tools or options related to this. And if I change, so make sure you have selected the proper self. Let's say I'm using something from here, so but you have set to some other self. Make sure you are you have set the proper self there. Okay, to the left you can see the toolbox, and here we have some very common options and some layouts options here. So we can move, rotate, scale, and select options here. And at the bottom you can see this is the time slider. So this is something we are going to use in animation. And bottom to that's the range slider here, and again it's to set the range for time slider. and this is the command line, and this is the feedback area here, and this is the command. Basically it's called the command line. And now the bottom of the Maya is called helpline here. Whenever I put my mouse cursor on something, you can see it's showing the tips or the name of the tools, something like that. Or you can even see the tools tooltip here. You can see when I put my mouse cursor on a tool, it says that it's saying something about the tool and the shortcut. Okay, to the right you can access the channel box and the layer editor here. This area always kind of changing. It always depend on the selection here. Now it's set to channel box and layer editor. If I select this one, this is called attribute editor, and if I select this one, this is called modeling toolkit. So we have 5 options here, and this is the modeling toolkit. This is related to rigging, and this is the attribute editor. This is the tool settings. So if you click it, it's going to give a floating window here. So let's close it, and this is the channel box. And here again you can see all those options stacking here. So this is the channel box, modeling toolkit, attribute editor, and human IK, which is this option. So make sure you have selected the right tab to work here. So let's say I'm working on the channel box and you have selected something else, so you are not going to find that same option. So make sure first you have selected the proper tab. Here at the center is called workspace. So this is the Maya interface, and we are going to see how to modify and how to set different interface. Now this interface is called Maya Classic, and you can see that from here. So this workspace is set to Maya Classic, and if I click on this, I'll get a drop down, and from this drop down I can set a different interface. So let's say modeling standard. If I select it, you might see some changes in this interface, and you can see that time slider, range slider are gone, and the command line is there, helpline is gone. I think the helpline is still there. Helpline and command line here is kind of a new design. Okay, so this is a kind of modeling related interface. When you are modeling, you don't need the time slider and range slider. That's why it's like not keeping that particular UI with this interface. So you can use this interface when you are modeling, but it doesn't matter, you can also model with this interface. So let me go back to the modeling standard, and you have some other options here. Modeling export, if you set this, you don't access to any of these tools or time slider or this side channel box. So it's kind of for experts who uses most of the experts are using the marking menu. So I'm going to come back to these things later. So they don't need these tools on the interface, so you can use this when you are like an expert or you're using marking menu basically. So we have sculpting interface, we have UV editing interface. So we have a lot of different interface, and for this section I'm going to use this Maya Classic. So let's go back to Maya Classic. So this is the by default interface basically. Okay, let's say you have changed the interface. We can change the interface. So let's see how to change the interface. So if I go to this, let's say this toolbox, and if I go to this dotted lines of the toolbox, I can hold left mouse and drag and make it a floating window like this. So I can keep it on my second monitor, or I can keep this on the right side. There is a slot for that, you can see. So you can modify the interface. So let's say I want the shelf at the bottom, I can bring that. So I can basically customize to my like. So I can let's say put the shelf here. I can modify it, and you can save this interface as a new interface by going to here. You can save current workspace as, you can give it a name and save it as your own interface. And let's say you want to come back to the factory default mode or come back to the factory default interface, you can do that by going to here. And now you can see Maya Classic has a kind of star mark because we have modified this interface. That's why that's there. So let's go and reset it from here. So we can reset current workspace and it will come back to the factory default mode. Okay, so let me go back to the menus here. So we have the menu selector. Make sure you have selected the proper menu when to access a particular menu here. So let's set to modeling, and you can see some options, some lines here. And let's say I'm using these options and on your PC it's not there like this. That means it collapsed. You can see this line and this little triangles to that. That means there is something which is collapsed. So these are basically grouped to different categories, like all these snapping options are in a group. So I can click on this left line of that group to collapse it like this, and if I click on it again, it's going to expand it. So that means if there is a triangle, that means some group is collapsed there. So if you don't found the options I'm using here, that means you have accidentally collapsed that thing. So let's click on that to expand. So here we have some collapsed options, so you can see. Okay, then let's see how to hide or show some UI elements manually. So you can do that by going to Windows, and here you can find something UI elements. You can just click on this double dotted line here and tear that off like this, and now you can see all the UI elements listed here. Let's say I don't want the time slider, I can turn this off, and I don't want the range slider, we can turn this off. Okay, we can do this manually, or we can again restore all UI elements like this. So let me show UI elements all. You can do that, or we can press Ctrl space key to maximize the full workspace, and it's like going to hide everything else. Ctrl space bar again to come back to everything. So whenever you are working on this workspace and you don't need these things for a while, you can just maximize by hitting Ctrl space, and now you are accessing a big screen. So you can do this as well. And here you can see I have a perspective view set to this workspace. If I hit space bar, or if I click on this layouts, you can see I have actually 4 views, and now this is the perspective view, top view, front view, side view. So these are basically 4 different cameras, and looking at the same place from different cameras. So we are looking at the same place from top here, from front, from side, and from the perspective, which is a free from rotate camera. And here you can see every viewport has its own menu and own icons. You can see they're identical. So we have identical menus for every panel or every viewport. We can call these things viewport or panel, you can call both. Okay, so we have identical options. So if you go and do something, it's going to affect this viewport. So yeah, I'm stopping this lecture here. In the next lecture we are going to see how to navigate these views. So see you there.